You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
Oh yeah, baby, that's lovely.
Good morning. Good morning. Hello and welcome to Psychedelics and Cannabis Educational News with News Hawks, myself, Cindy Howell, and my co-host this morning, Al Graham. And we are here live at the Legacy420.com news desk, and we are live on the networks of Facebook and YouTube, Twitter, Boxcast locations, paceradio.net, and cbgtv.com. Good morning, Al.
Good morning, Cindy. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
Not too bad. I'm just so you over here to my side. I'm petting a dog over here. Come down to visit me as soon as they heard the start. They go, "Oh, Al's going on the TV. I got to go see him."
I've got three sleeping animals around me here. They all seem to be quite content.
Good. Exactly.
We have 8 stories this morning, 4 before and 4 after the break. We might as well get to her.
We might as well.
Might as well. Coming to you this morning from the CBC, most medical cannabis users aren't going the prescription route, raising safety concerns. And this is from a Manitoba-led study that I believe you were part of.
Yes, I was part of this study. It happened a couple of years ago, and the results were released yesterday morning or Tuesday morning. I participated in the release of those of the report, and everybody who participated in it was given a Zoom link in order to be involved in it and listen to what everybody had to say. We could ask some questions to be involved in it that way as well, which I did get a question in, and others did as well. So, but it was good to be involved and see the results of it.
Yeah. So a new report led by the University of Manitoba suggests the majority of Canadians who consume medical cannabis aren't being prescribed the medicine, but rather are getting it through the recreational market, raising some health and safety concerns. In Canada, cannabis can be legally accessed recreationally or through a medical cannabis licensed seller with a medical authorization, similar to a prescription. Among people who use cannabis for medical needs rather than for recreational purposes, 2/3 of people use it for chronic pain, mental health, or sleep issues, so says the report.
Yeah, over half of the 5,744 Canadians surveyed for the study published on Tuesday obtained their cannabis without medical authorization. Now, according to Linda Balnias, who's a professor in the College of Nursing at the University of Manitoba, who I met there the other day, she says this raises real concerns about safety. The people who consumed cannabis without a medical authorization were 20% less likely to speak to or seek information from a healthcare professional and 16% more likely to rely on unqualified sources of information, including social media and staff at the recreational cannabis stores.
Yeah, I have all kinds of comments about that, but the medical community doesn't know enough about cannabis to be considered experts on it yet. But that's a whole other story. These people without a prescription were also 14% more likely to report not knowing how much cannabis they were taking and 7% more likely to experience side effects. She says some survey respondents got their cannabis products from family or friends or from unregulated sellers online. It raises concerns in terms of has that product gone through good manufacturing processes? Could there be potential for contamination? Is the labeling on the product accurate in terms of the amount of THC, the cannabinoid that makes people feel high? It may not be accurate, and then that potentially could lead to people experiencing more side effects. She said, well, I'm gonna
That can
just
happen
tell
with
you,
legal cannabis.
we're talking legal. If we're talking legal cannabis here, my dad, bought me a gift. He was being very sweet. He goes in. He tried to remember everything I like about edibles, and he bought me 2 edibles from the legal store. One was 4 milligrams, so said the package. One was 10 milligrams, so said the package. 14 milligrams. I can handle at least 25, so I ate them both. And I was so high that I had to go to bed. They had it completely wrong. There was no way that I only ate 14 milligrams. It was more like I ate 140 milligrams. I was insanely high for me. So there are issues everywhere, and we shouldn't blame that or continue to blame that on the unregulated market when the so-called regulated market has been sued any number of times for injuring people with their cannabis. I'm one of the people that got paid out because I have a cannabis injury from their chemicals that they put in it and from the regulated market. And then, like I say, just before Christmas there, I had apparently 14 milligrams, but holy was I high.
Wow, really, eh?
Yeah.
They say that, yeah, I know we just did a story recently, Kelly and I did it, where the packaging was wrong, the label was wrong, and the percentage of THC that was in the product was 10 times higher than what was on the label. So I could see some people being surprised by that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what happened to me.
Yeah, most survey respondents reported minor side effects like cough and feeling tired, but some reported very severe nausea and vomiting, dizziness, and even experiencing falls because they had taken more THC than expected. Now, Dr. Paul Danek, a palliative care physician out of Cancer Care, Manitoba, wasn't involved in the survey, but has been prescribing cannabis for 20 years. He wonders whether people rely on the expertise of salespeople at the recreational pot stores who aren't medical professionals, and he says that's a little scary.
Yeah, it could be. There's also a financial barrier for people who have gotten an authorization from their doctor to buy medical cannabis, the study found. Less than 6% of the people with a medical authorization said they received insurance coverage for the cost of medical cannabis, and they reported spending 25% more for cannabis than those without medical authorization, the study found. Nearly half of those who stopped taking medical cannabis did so because it was too expensive. I agree.
Yeah, they said the people are telling us that they're either stopping using medical cannabis or they're walking away from the legal market because they can't afford it. When non-medical cannabis was legalized, she thought the underground market would disappear, but cracks in the regulated system has left room for people to access cannabis that way.
Yeah. She says, I was kind of shocked that the market hasn't stabilized in a way that supported people to use a safe supply of medical cannabis. The report developed with McGill University and in consultation with the patient groups Medical Cannabis Canada, SheCan Cannabis, and Santé Cannabis made a number of recommendations to improve the medical cannabis system and its users during the federal government's current review of the Cannabis Act and regulations. And some of those recommendations included a formal evaluation of the medical cannabis framework, in consultation with patients, changes to reduce out-of-pocket costs associated with medical cannabis. That would be nice. To add community pharmacy dispensing, to maintain reasonable access to cannabis through a dedicated medical framework, to maintain a federally run hub that provides updated information and resources about medical cannabis, to create healthcare professional education training focused on medical cannabis.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I think there's some key things in there that should be included, especially, as they said, a formal evaluation of the medical cannabis framework in consultation with the patients. There's not even a patient or a doctor, a medical doctor, that's involved in the survey, in the process right now of the Cannabis Act review.
Oh my, yeah.
So it just makes, and I like to see the fact that they've got on there to create healthcare professional education training.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite ones right there. Yeah. Train the doctors to be able to answer the questions, and don't train them with the reefer madness, system that we are trying to still demolish because it may be legalized, but the government is still full of reefer madness. We need these doctors to educate properly, and so they know how to help their patients.
Yep. Adding community pharmacy dispensing, whether that is through a pharmacy or whether it's through a storefront of a medical store. That's something that's going before the courts right now. So it'd be interesting to see what happens there as well.
Absolutely.
So now
Absolutely.
they believe the training for healthcare professionals will help reduce stigma about cannabis, which they think is part of the issue with people not going to the healthcare providers for the medical cannabis. He also thinks that healthcare professionals are unfair with prescribing it because they aren't taught to do so in their training, which was highlighted.
Yep. Yep, absolutely. And because they don't have that knowledge, they don't have the experience. And I think that's where some of the biggest barriers are happening. The physician, hopes that the study will highlight the deficiencies in the medical cannabis system for those in power, and will hopefully help them fix it.
Yeah, exactly. I completely agree.
I'm just clicking buttons here. I'm going to
Oh,
get
that's all right. You go ahead and click buttons. Let's see. They also found out that oil was the most frequently used item for licensed people, whereas dried flower was more likely to be used by non-licensed people.
Absolutely.
I got 3
and
notes on here.
The edibles are, they're
1 and 2.
1 and 2.
1 in 2 people use cannabis to reduce pharmaceutical drugs, and I was one of those. No opiates.
No, I don't take anything anymore. I just had a picture. What was it, last week? 3-4 days ago, pop up, and it was when I got 50% through of getting rid of my pharmaceuticals when I was on 11 different drugs. Well, I was on 9 because I was switching from some to another. So really, I was prescribed 9 and getting rid of 2 already. But I was technically on 11. And when I made it down to 5 different drugs, I took a picture of what I had left, and it was still huge, like this great big pile that would have been 2 handfuls. And I got rid of it all with cannabis, and I'm super happy.
Now, 62% of the people who participated in that survey were women, and 93% of them were high school graduates as well. So
very good.
There you go.
Very good. Heading over to our next story, coming to us from StratCan. It's another study which highlights ongoing gaps in the medical cannabis access in Canada.
That's right. A group of medical cannabis advocates, researchers, and academics are drawing attention to what they say are concerns with proper access to medical cannabis in Canada. The study was one of the largest of its kind, surveyed more than 5,000 medical cannabis patients in Canada about their use of cannabis and how they accessed it. Sounds like a follow-up to the previous story.
It does, doesn't it? The accompanying report shows that individuals using cannabis for medical purposes continuing purchase from outside the medical system. And I think it is just a continuation of the last story. They utilize a mixture of the medical access program, the non-medical or recreational system, which are pretty much one and the same, and through the illicit or unregulated market. Respondents also noted increased challenges with access to the federal medical cannabis platform, including uncooperative healthcare professionals and higher costs.
More than half of those reported using cannabis for medical purposes had an authorization to access the medical program. Said they also utilized the non-medical system. Principal investigator in the study, Dr. Linda Balnes, I heard her say it many times. I still can't
and we just said it in the last story too.
Yeah. She says that the results are troubling since those assessing from non-medical sources lack the guidance of a medical professional, and cannabis retail employees are not allowed to give medical advice. This is
no,
they're not. Exactly. This is concerning as, according to our survey findings, those who take cannabis without medical authorization were less likely to seek information from healthcare professionals, less aware of the amount of cannabis that they were consuming, and more likely to use the unregulated market than those with one.
But a lot of us that do have our medical licenses still go to the unregulated market because, and for me anyway, I am searching for the terpenes I want. Like I'm searching for those things that help me and that I enjoy. And and if I have to go to the unregulated market, I do. If I can find what I'm looking for in a regulated store and not in the regulated market, I'll go to the regulated store. I mean, like when I drive through Quebec, there is a particular licensed producer that grows skunk number 1, and they grow it well, and they grow it perfect. And it takes me back when I smoke it to the 90s of, like that skunky, make your parents run off and look for the skunk that's outside and stuff like that. Like, I mean, and that's what this company grows. So whenever I go through Quebec, I mean, like I stop and I buy it because it's the only place I have found in all of Canada that actually grows skunk number 1 properly.
Was it you that commented on the picture I posted the other day of the seeds that my friend was growing?
Yes, the old ones, the skunk number 1, because like it's my
You saw
favorite
them in the
strain.
back of the picture. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay. Where were we? This is concerning as according to our study findings, those who take cannabis without medical authorizations. Okay, I've read that. People who don't have medical authorization are more likely to obtain cannabis from recreational store or the unregulated market rather than a federal licensed medical seller, which means they have limited access to medical advice on things like dosage, potency, and type of product. If it raises concerns about whether people are using medical cannabis safely and effectively, and if there could be a potential harms to their health.
Yeah. As we learned in the last story, there were 5,744 survey respondents, and 95% of them reported currently taking medical cannabis. 54% of these individuals held current authorization, and 1/3 of those using cannabis for medical purposes reported doing so for more than 10 years, and 1/2 for at least 5, most commonly for issues like chronic pain, anxiety, and sleep. And 83% take medical cannabis at least once a day. And those with a current medical authorization were more likely to use cannabis oil, as you were saying from your notes, while those without an authorization were more likely to use the dried flower. And half of them said that they were using cannabis to reduce medications like opiates. And then I commented that I did that and you did that as well.
Yeah. The Cannabis Act is structured so that Canadians who are seeking medical advice face significant barriers compared to the non-medical system, which is completely true, which is effect discourages and penalizes safe and accessible use for patients with a medical authorization. This comes from Max Mahan Ellison, the board chair of Medical Cannabis Canada. And they go on to say that the MCAS data clearly highlights that Canadians accessing cannabis for medical purposes deserve more support, and that starts with informed, patient-centered changes to the cannabis regulations. And as you know, they asked that question, 5.2, is the program even necessary?
Yep.
Review.
I
got to go get my dog. I'll be right back.
Okay.
You keep going.
Okay. This story is pretty much, it gives us a few more things from the last story. The Cannabis Act is structured so the Canadians who are seeking medical access face significant barriers compared to non-medical system, as Al just said. It's sad. You can go on and read that story for yourself, or finish reading it. There's just a couple more paragraphs. And it talks about, all the things that Al and I have just covered. I'm going to go back to clicking buttons here and get the next story up. The buttons have to work to make it. They're not in order when it comes up on StreamYard for me to add them to.
No,
so I
hate that.
I have to read. Normally they're in order, but this time they weren't. So I apologize for taking a second there. Heading over to our third story. Pardon me. We're heading over to the Medical Express, and we're going to learn a little bit about psychedelics and cognition for a new look.
The synthesis of LSD and psilocybin in the early mid-20th century sparked not only a new counterculture in the United States, but also a new interest in brain science, specifically the role of neuron transmitters. Despite these discoveries, research on psychedelics went dormant for decades due to anti-drug sentiment. A recent reconnaissance in psychedelic research seeks to understand how these drugs might be leveraged as tools in treating mental illness. While this work has focused largely on mathematical modeling and resting state neuroimaging, that is now shifting. Cognitive neuroscientists are bringing new rigor to the field using behavioral and clinical studies to investigate the cognitive effects of psychedelic drugs.
Despite psychedelics having some of the most interesting subjective effects of any psychoactive drug, they're generally being shown to impair cognition, like most psychoactive drugs. Says Manoj Das of Johns Hopkins University, who is chairing a symposium on psychedelics and cognition at the Cognitive Neuroscience Society, the CNS annual meeting on the 4th. So that was 2 days ago in San Francisco. One reason for this is that cognitive neuroscientists have been less involved with this work. So when the impact of psychedelics on cognition is measured, the tasks tend to be relatively simple and outdated.
And I've lost where we were. Oh, we are. The landscape of these studies is rapidly changing. However, with a wealth of new research, looking at everything from how psychedelics can aid in understanding the malleability of memory to exactly how psilocybin can increase the spontaneous creative process. Now, Natasha Mason of Maastricht University says that there are massive overarching gaps in our knowledge regarding psychedelics and cognition. I can't get that word out either. There is a huge surge of interest in these substances therapeutically, but until now, there has been no neurocognitive account that ties acute and persisting psychedelic-induced changes in cognition and long-term therapeutic response.
Natasha Mason's interest in psychedelics research began the way many do in neuroscience, with a deep desire to better treat brain diseases. While initially pursuing a career in pharmacy, she remembers searching the literature for alternative treatments for mental health disorders and finding a paper on the promise of psychedelics in treating depression and anxiety. The literature seemed exciting. A one-time ingestion of psychedelic resulted in long-term symptom reduction. This was unheard of in my pharmacy class, she says. Unfortunately, the science was young, the substance is illegal, and only a handful of universities could conduct the research. Mason then decided to move to, the Maastricht University in the Netherlands to pursue this line of investigation.
In new work she is presenting in the CNS symposium, Mason's team investigated whether a moderate use or dose of psilocybin affects creative cognition. Looking both at the acute and persisting effects, she says, I find it quite an exciting study, as despite this historical association between psychedelic use and creativity, it is the first modern trial to access this in a scientifically rigorous way, she says.
Yeah, indeed. Many individuals have anecdotally reported enhanced creative capacity after psychedelic medicine use, and psychedelic-assisted clinical trials have been used to treat a range of disorders characterized by extremely inflexible thought patterns. The premise is that the psychedelic experience can provide therapeutic relief by breaking patterns out of the rigid, maladaptive thought patterns. In their double-blind, placebo-controlled study, Mason's team found that psilocybin, and I wonder how they do placebo for psilocybin, found that psilocybin increased ratings of spontaneous creative insights while also decreasing deliberate task-specific creativity. They also found that novel ideas increased 7 days after the psilocybin exposure. Brain imaging supported the behavioral changes in creativity.
Mason hopes that their work will lead to better understanding of whether psychedelics induce a window of opportunity for enhanced therapy. If there is a persistent subacute change in creative cognition, maybe we can use this period to help people integrate their acute insights with a therapist and come up with a new, more effective strategies that facilitate adaptive interpretation, and coping with abilities.
Manoj Das' interest in psychedelics stems from his interest in human memory, and in particular, reconciliation, reactivating memories to make them more fluid in order to help patients suffering from disorders like depression and post-traumatic stress disorder. Unfortunately, reconciliation paradigms in humans have not exactly led to clinical breakthroughs. But one reason may be that complex memories maintained over several years are not easily rendered I can't even say that word. Look, it's not even coming to me.
I know how you feel.
Thank you. Doss says that's where psychedelics could come into play by potentially inducing plasticity in the cortex. Whew.
But before scientists can test psychedelics' role in reconciliation, they first need to better understand how they affect various aspects of memory. In preprint analysis, those who were presenting at the CNS meeting, he and colleagues looked at 10 data sets from studies investigating how psychedelics influence episodic memory. They found that while psychedelics such as psilocybin and MDMA impair the encoding of memories that rely on recalling specific details, they can enhance the encoding of memories that rely on familiarity. This differs from hallucinogens like ketamine, which appear to impair both types of memory encoding.
Yeah, ketamine's it's definitely a suppressant. Interestingly, non-drug studies have found that when recollection fails and familiarity is high, peculiar phenomena emerge, reminiscent of someone on psychedelics such as deja vu and premonition. Doss explains. Although psychedelics may actually help some come to tangible insights, much of the psychedelic experience might be turning up the gain of such feelings of familiarity or insight. And like non-drug studies that can induce such feelings through cognitive manipulations, these feelings can potentially be misattributed to unrelated stimuli or ideas, giving rise to false memories or illusionary insights. The new work suggests that psychedelics may enable the brain to bypass or minimize the need for the hippocampus. The hippocampus is thought to help mediate how the cortex learns, with more permanent memories arising from regular representations across the episodic memories.
Now, Doss goes on to say that having a negative sense of self or defining traumatic moment may thus come to be coded in the cortex, especially after years of suffering, and maladaptive representations may be particularly difficult to disrupt when new information coming in is biased by a negative sense of self and recent negative experiences. So psychedelics thus could provide an opportunity to rapidly overwrite maladaptive memories and perhaps even provide a fresh set of contextual influences that aid new encoding even once one is sober.
Yeah. Wow. Doss cautions that there is still much to be developed, not only in terms of understanding these medicines' impact on memory and cognition, but also at the intersection of psychotherapy and the medicines, of course. Current studies administer to subjects high doses of psychedelic medicines 2 to 3 times that which someone may use for a substantially intoxicated walk through the woods. So they're talking about hero doses. While they lay on a couch with eye shades on, although there are therapists in the room that may provide support during difficult moments, there is no formal therapy during the acute effects, and participants are encouraged to direct their attention inward, he says. And Doss sees the future in testing how certain types of therapy or stimuli could assist in psychedelic-induced therapy sessions. He also points towards developments that, with the medicines themselves becoming more targeted towards specific desired effects or time courses. Doss and Mason hope that the CNS session will help spur new collaborations and directions for psychedelics and cognition research. Well, that's actually really exciting.
Yeah.
One of my issues is memory.
The more information and stuff that gets out. Go ahead.
I'm clicking. I was just going to say, one of my issues with the PTSDs, it's left me with a lack of memory, and psychedelics give me hope of getting my long-term memory back.
Good. Yeah. All right.
Yep. On to the last story before the break. Coming to us from the Evening Standard, psychedelic medicine improves symptoms of depression for 6 months, so says the study.
Yeah, a psychedelic drug that helps trips lasting half an hour improves the symptoms of moderate to severe depression for up to 6 months, early trial results suggest. Biotechnology company Small Pharma announced the results of its phase 2A clinical trials of the effects of pharmaceutical grade formulation in, I'm going to say it's DMT, on major depressive disorder, simply referred to as depression.
Yeah. Yeah, the medicine is a powerful hallucinogenic found in several plants, and the psychoactive compound found in ayahuasca, a compound used in shamanic rituals in South America. And of course, they're talking about the NN-DMT. There is also the 5-MeO, which comes from toads. In this study, 34 patients were given the medicine during a clinical session with supportive therapy. And the individual sessions lasted less than 2.5 hours and included pre-parentation session with a therapist. So they had to sit with a therapist first. A psychedelic experience after administering the medicine, which the therapist was present, lasting less than 30 minutes, and a therapy session to help patients process their trip afterwards.
According to data from the trial, among the patients who had achieved remission within 3 months of taking the medicine, 64% sustained remission in 6 months. Robin Carhart Harris, director of the Psychedelics Division at the Weill Institute of Neurosciences at the University of California, San Francisco, is also the Ralph Mentzer Distinguished Professor of Neurology and Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences, says these data indicate that SPL026 can elicit a fast-acting antidepressant response that appears to be enduring in several cases.
Yeah, Carhart Harris pops up a lot when we talk psychedelics in these things. Robin's doing a lot, and it's really exciting. Recent neuroimaging and preclinical findings imply regenerative action with DMT and other related serotonin agonists. The trial investigated the effects and safety of 21.5 milligrams of DMT, or as they're calling it, the SPL026, given intravenously, wow, with support therapy in 34 patients with moderate or severe depression. Intravenously. Well, that's interesting.
The study was, well, it's a pharmaceutical version, so
yeah.
It could be that way. So the study was carried out in 2 stages. The first aimed to assess the efficacy of small doses of the SPL with supportive therapy compared to a placebo. And in the second, patients received the SPL 026 treatment and were followed up for further 3 months in study.
They continue to be followed up out of study to 6 months after the second stage, enabling further assessment of the durability of the antidepressant effect. A total of 25 patients from both treatment groups completed the 6-month patient follow-up. And according to the results announced this past Tuesday, which have not been peer-reviewed, of these patients, 14 had initially achieved remission, considered to be no depression or very mild depression within the 3-month in-study period.
Nice. 9 of these people sustained remission at 6 months. Dr. Carol Rutledge, Chief Medical and Scientific Officer, says, with our ongoing analysis of the Phase 2A trial data, we are increasingly encouraged by the treatment potential of the SPL026. You say a single dose in conjunction with the therapy demonstrated a rapid and robust antidepressant effort after 1 week.
Exciting. This new data shows that the antidepressant effect was sustained for 6 months in 2/3 of the patients who were in remission at an earlier time point in the study. As we finalize the design of Phase 2B study, this data helps to inform our understanding of treatment durability and our approach to patient retreatment within the trial.
George Cesaris, Chief Executive of Small Pharma, says, we are pleased to see that the participants in our study experienced durable relief from their depression for an extended period of time. Goes on to say that given these clinical outcomes from 1 or 2 treatments, this could further offer potential value to healthcare systems that face challenges with patients who struggle to adhere to their daily antidepressant use.
Dr. James Rucker, consultant psychiatrist and senior clinical lecturer at the Institution of Psychiatry, Psychology, and Neuroscience at King's College London, said, Phase 2A trials generally cannot tell us whether a treatment is effective, but they can pave the way for further trials that may. This is the case here. On the face of it, this data is encouraging. However, this part of the study does not include a comparator group, so it is not possible to gauge whether the participants have improved for reasons unrelated to the medicine and therapy provided.
Goes on to say, it is important to note that when all participants who took part in this part of the trial were considered, the majority were not in remission. This is not unusual in trials of major depression and underpins the observation that major depression is a multifactorial problem that responds in psychological and social treatments as well as biological.
The work is a good foundation for further, more rigorous trials using DMT given alongside psychotherapy for people suffering with major depression. I agree. It's exciting. I think that this is all exciting for people suffering with CPTSD, depression, anxiety. But that brings us to break time. It is medication time and time for us to have a joint session. You're watching Psychedelics and Cannabis Educational News here on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Boxcast, Roku TV, paceradio.net, and cbgtv.com.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
When you think of the number of unique products developed in the fields, kitchens, and labs at Legacy 420, it's hard to think that one stands out above the rest. But tell that to the thousands of people who have tried this amazing breakthrough product.
This is our Sacred Salve. This is actually our extra strength. It comes in 5 different strengths. It's all natural, all organic. It typically works within 10 to 15 minutes of putting it on. It's good for arthritis, it's good for inflammation, any kind of pain. We're very proud of it.
Sacred Salve, so easy to apply, along with soothing relief. To select a strength that's right for you, come in and talk to your trusted partner. Legacy 420 out on your road.
Did you know that the Pace Radio Network isn't just a radio network? That's right, because most, but not all of our programming is now done via video and is then podcasted at paceradio.net. So if you want to watch our programming, you'll find us on the Pace Radio Network's Facebook page, plus the show's own page, and you'll find us live on the network's YouTube channel. And don't forget, you can find it all, video and audio, at paceradio.net.
Pace Radio Network, by patients, for patients, and for those who want to know.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Are you a cannabis content creator? Are you looking for a place to have your content seen? If you answer yes to both questions, then you need to check out cbgtv.com.
Let's share Pace everywhere. That way it can help create peace. People everywhere advocating cannabis education. You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
And we are back from our medication session, and we are here live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Boxcast, paceradio.net, and cbgtv.com. And we might as well jump right into the next story. Coming to us from Cannabis Health News, cannabis and diabetes, CBD, THC spray shows promise in patients with type 2.
Good. Findings from a new clinical trial add a growing evidence base for potential cannabinoids managing diabetes, and they say that the rise in people living with type 2 diabetes is an impending global health crisis.
Yeah, according to the World Health Organization, the number of people with diabetes rose from 108 million in 1980 to 422 million in 2014. Wow. More than 95% of people with diabetes have type 2, which can develop as a result of obesity and high blood pressure. While it can be managed through diet, physical activity, medication, and regular screening, complications can result in blindness, kidney failure, heart attack, stroke, and lower limb amputation.
In the UK alone, the charities Diabetes UK has warned that up to 1 in 10 adults could have diabetes by 2030, describing it as a public health emergency, with much need for intervention and cannabis-based medicines becoming more widely available for medical and research purposes. Scientists are investigating the potential of cannabinoids to help manage type 2 diabetes.
A cannabis-based sublingual spray has been shown to help lower cholesterol and control blood sugar levels in patients with type 2 diabetes. In a new placebo-controlled clinical trial, diabetic patients administered the spray containing CBD and THC showed improvements in their blood sugar and cholesterol levels.
A team of researchers from Iran evaluated the efficacy of proprietary formulation of plant-derived CBD THC compared to the placebo in a cohort of 50 patients with type 2 diabetes. Patients were given a twice daily dose over a period of 8 weeks.
Interesting. At the end of the 8 weeks, results showed a statistically significant decline in total cholesterol, triglycerides, LDL-C, and FBS, which is the fasting blood glucose levels, HB, hemoglobin, and insulin secretion in the patients treated with the CBDEX10. The treatment was well tolerated, and there were no serious or severe adverse effects, according to the study.
Researchers concluded, in the present study, we demonstrated that sublingual administration of a THC CBD spray twice daily through an 8-week treatment period could effectively improve the patient's lipid profile and glucose tolerance.
Based on these observations, the combination of the CBD and the Delta-9 THC regime could be a new therapeutic regime for controlling the lipid profile and glycemic state of DM, which is the type 2 diabetic patients. The findings contribute to a small but growing evidence-based for the role of cannabis compounds in treating and potentially even preventing diabetes.
Yeah, a study published in the American Journal of Medicine back in 2013 concluded that cannabis compounds may help control blood sugar and that those who consumed it were less likely to be obese with higher levels of good cholesterol. In 2014, a summary published in the Natural Medicine Journal also concluded that in thousands of subjects, past and current cannabis use was associated with lower levels of fasting insulin, blood glucose, insulin resistance, BMI, which is body mass index, and waist circumference.
Elsewhere, a peer-reviewed study from 2022 analyzed data from the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, which was conducted between 2013 and 2018 from approximately 15,000 participants. Researchers found that females who use cannabis heavily, defined as 4 or more times a month, were less likely to be diagnosed with diabetes than those who did not use cannabis or used it less frequently. Well, if they say heavy is 4 or 5 times a month, I don't know if they'd want to look at me. Do that in the first hour of waking up. The cannabinoid THCV, an analog of THC, is sometimes referred to as diet weed due to its supposed appetite curbing and energy boosting properties.
At high levels, THCV can act similarity to THC, but its effects are weaker. Some emerging evidence suggests that THCV could be used as a tool to aid weight loss, and previous data from clinical trials have shown that it may decrease fasting glucose levels in type 2 diabetes.
Interesting. A small study supported by a grant from the National Institute for Health also indicated that it could help aid weight loss, with participants losing up to 3 points off their BMI when taking a hemp extract containing THCV and CBDV. Research by the American Alliance for Medical Cannabis, the AAMC, suggested that cannabis may have a range of health benefits for people who have already been diagnosed with diabetes.
Who would have thought? You smoke cannabis in order to lose weight. Everybody's saying it's the other way around. You get the munchies, right?
Yeah.
Now, according to its website, as well as stabilizing blood sugars and lowering blood pressure over time, reducing the risk of complications, cannabis may help to suppress some of the arterial inflammation, prevent nerve inflammation, and improve circulation. It could also ease symptoms such as therapeutic pain relief, muscle cramps, and pain of gastrointestinal or GI disorders like Crohn's.
Well, early evidence for the role of cannabinoids in managing diabetes is promising. Further research is needed before any solid conclusions can be made. And I hope that they do research. Like, I mean, that's kind of exciting. I've just learned of new cannabinoids that I never heard of before.
More research.
Yeah, this THCV.
One of the most researched plants out there, but we need more research. Yeah.
Yep. On to our next story. Coming to us from Beard Bros Farms. Medical cannabis legalization leads to reduced opiate payments to physicians.
Medical cannabis legalization has been a hot topic for decades, with proponents arguing that it can serve as a safer alternative to opioid medications for pain management. One of their often overlooked effects of medical cannabis legalization is the potential for reduced opioid payments to physicians. A recent study has found that medical cannabis legalization is linked to a significant decrease in opioid-related payments to doctors, indicating that medical cannabis may be a viable solution to the opioid epidemic. In this article, we'll explore the link between medical cannabis legalization and the reduced opioid payments to physicians, as well as the problems associated with opioid payments to them.
The opioid epidemic has devastated the U.S. and Canada for years, causing widespread addiction, overdose deaths, and lasting damage to communities across the country. Opiates are a class of drugs that include prescription opiate painkillers like codeine or Oxycontin, and illegal drugs like heroin. Overprescription of opiates by doctors and aggressive marketing by pharmaceutical companies have contributed to the epidemic, according to the CDC. Nearly 50,000 people died from opiate overdose in the U.S. in just 2019, and over 1.6 million people had an opiate use disorder. That's gross.
Yeah.
Efforts to combat the epidemic have included increased regulation to prescription opioids, increased access to addiction treatment, and the promotion of alternative pain management options like medical cannabis. And of course, for every prescription that doctors write, they get a bonus check.
20 years ago, I had the option, cannabis or opioids, to deal with my Crohn's disease.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, I've only had 2 prescriptions for opiate drugs, and that was while I was hospitalized. One of them I took home, took 6 pills, and gave them back to the pharmacy.
Yep.
And I've just used nothing but cannabis. So I completely agree that they can reduce the opioid use. There's no doubt about it. And when it reduces the opioid use, it's reducing the money that's being paid out to the doctors.
Yep.
Very simple.
Greedy doctors, incented, and like they're, incentive. That word is not coming out of my mouth. They are given incentives. There we go. I'll say it a different way. By pharmaceutical companies with financial kickbacks, have played a significant role in driving the overprescription of opiates. As a result, tens of thousands of Americans and Canadians have died from opiate overdoses, and millions more are struggling with addiction. And this is it's not just the United States. It's not just Canada. It's worldwide.
It's all over. The practice of doctors accepting financial incentives for prescribing opioids is nothing short of immoral. These so-called pill pushers put profit over people's lives and contribute to the ongoing epidemic. It's time to call out these money-hungry doctors for their role in this crisis and demand accountability. Pharmaceutical industry should also be held accountable for its role in promoting and profiting from the opioid epidemic. And that's why they're being sued for billions of dollars.
Yeah. A recent study found that medical cannabis legalization is linked to a significant decrease in opiate-related payments to doctors. The study referred to is titled Medical Cannabis Laws and Opiate Analgesic Overdose Mortality in the United States, 1999 to 2010, and was published in the Journal of the American Medical Association in 2014. The study analyzed state-level data on medical cannabis laws and opiate overdose deaths from 1999 to 2010, and found that the states with medical cannabis laws had a 25% lower mean annual opiate overdose mortality rate compared to states without medical cannabis laws. The study also found that the medical cannabis laws were associated with a reduction in opiate prescribing patterns and opiate-related payments to physicians.
Exactly. Another more recent study published in the Journal of Health and Economics in 2020 examined the relationship between medical cannabis laws and Medicare Part D opioid prescribing. This study analyzed data from 2010 to 2015 and found that the implementation of medical cannabis laws was associated with a reduction in opioid prescriptions filled and decrease in opioid prescribing rates. The study also found that medical cannabis laws were associated with a reduction in opioid-related payments to physicians. If they're not writing out the prescriptions, they're not getting the payment. So
That's right. Despite the potential benefits of medical cannabis, many patients still face barriers to accessing it. In the United States, medical cannabis is legal in 36 states and the District of Columbia, but there are still legal restrictions and lack of availability in some areas. Access to medical cannabis is important for patients who need it for pain management. Medical cannabis can offer a safer alternative to opiates, reducing the risk of addiction and overdose. Patients with access to MMJ can make informed decision about their pain management and even take cannabis as medication for opiate use. It is important to continue advocating for medical cannabis legalization and ensuring that patients have access to this potentially life-saving treatment.
exactly. I completely agree. They should have access to it. I'm just going to cut the story off there. I see we're getting a little low on time, and we still got 2 more stories to go. So
Absolutely. That was pretty much what they were meant to say anyway.
right.
I am just back to clicking buttons, and we are heading to the second to last story. Over with StratCan, cannabis consumers in Canada are more likely to be younger and female in compared to the U.S.
Canada has higher proportion of younger cannabis users and female cannabis users than the U.S., according to the cannabis study, cannabis data platform Headset. The recent released data compares sales figures from Ontario and Alberta, as well as 8 legal U.S. states against trends from 2021 to 2023.
The 8 legal U.S. states surveyed were Washington, Oregon, Michigan, Nevada, Massachusetts, Arizona, Colorado, and California. Millennial and Gen Z consumers accounted for over 72% of all tracked sales in Canada compared to 63% in the U.S. While males are still the majority of cannabis consumers in both countries, the 2 Canadian provinces Headset analyzed showed that a 37.5% market share for females compared to 33.8% in the United States when compared to sales in February 22 and February 2023.
Canada's female representation in total sales also grew faster, 1.2%, year over year compared to its U.S. counterparts between January 2021 and December 2022. These figures were not evenly distributed in both countries. While female participation in the cannabis market has increased in both countries, overall U.S. figures were held back by declines in Oregon and to a lesser degree Colorado and Arizona. Conversely, Nevada, California, and Massachusetts saw a modest increase.
Alberta also saw a very small decline in the market share from female customers at 0.1%, while Ontario saw a 0.7% increase. Despite those small declines, Alberta had the highest level of female cannabis market participation of all the surveyed jurisdictions at a 39.1%, followed by Washington State and Ontario very closely.
Yeah. Males continue to dominate the concentrates and dried flower product categories, while female consumers hold a greater market share in topicals, tinctures, and sublinguals and edibles compared to every other product category. Yeah.
Millennials, who are 27 to 42, continue to make up the majority of cannabis consumers in both countries, with a 50.3% market share in the 2 Canadian provinces and 46.2% in the states that were surveyed. And Canadian cannabis consumers trend slightly younger than American consumers. Gen Z and millennials, 11 to 42, make up more than 70% of the market share in Canada compared to 63% in the US. And I'm sure that they're not talking about the 11 to 19-year-olds. Compared to 63% in the US. Gen X and baby boomers, who are 43 to 77, make up a larger portion of the market in the US than Canada, with 37% of the market compared to 27%. Well, that's interesting. Baby boomers in the States are are more into the cannabis than they are here.
Yeah. While millennials dominated sales in both countries, Gen X was the fastest growing demographic, eating into the millennial market share. In the U.S., Gen Z's share of total sales has grown by 11.3% in February of 2023 compared to February of 2022, with a 15% to 16% of sales. In
Well, that's
Canada,
because they've had some of their kids age into using cannabis. That's why.
yeah.
Yeah.
In Canada, Gen Z's share of total sales grew from 20.6% to 21.8%, so they went up a percentage.
In both countries, older consumers tend to prefer greater variety of products and tend to prefer more wellness-focused cannabis products compared to younger consumers. They also showed a greater affinity for edibles than the younger counterparts. Yeah, we don't want to smoke as much as the kids, and that's for sure, which is really kind of cool. I've got a feeling we're going to learn a lot of the similar stuff in the next story.
Yeah, if you got time to cover it, because we got a 2-minute closing and we got like 2 minutes to read this next story.
Okay, well let's just do the first couple of paragraphs then.
Okay.
Motherhead magazine: men and younger generations consume the most cannabis. I think we're going to learn what we just learned.
Yeah, because the other story talked about the ladies, and they did mention the men are higher consumers, and this is what this is about. And they said the majority of cannabis sold in Canada and the United States during the first months of this year were purchased by men, millennials, and Gen Z consumers, according to Headset.
Yeah, which is what we just wrote. Headset released a new report on Thursday, lighting cannabis users' demographics in the U.S. and Canada, and the company's market intelligence software tracks point-of-sale transactions. And we are going to learn, I think, what we just learned in the previous story, which is okay because we are running out of time. It is now time for me to say, thank you so much for joining us, and that's our PACE news report for today. April 6, 2023. And we are joining you from the Legacy420.com news desk and for our buds at Campbellford Lifestyle Shop and Legacy420.com. In closing, we'd like to say thank you for watching and listening. And you can catch our next broadcast on Monday with Reverend Kelly and her lovely co-host Al. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for the last minute fill in. Hopefully Glenn will be back to good internet sooner rather than later.
We never did mention that, Glenn's not here. I'm only filling in for him because at last minute he had internet issues. So which is too bad. But hopefully he will be back soon and not have any more of those issues. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great weekend. Come on back on Monday and join Reverend Kelly and Al. Yeah.
Have a good weekend.
420 is in 2 weeks today.
2 weeks today, and I will be sitting in Vancouver covered by smoke. It'll be awesome. Have a great weekend, folks.
Bye-bye. You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
When you have a pain that's reached its peak, Legacy for 20, it's so unique. If organic cannabis is what you seek, here's your trusted partners 7 days a week. Suppository salves, vapes and drops, topicals, edibles, infused pop. Just when life seems like it ain't easy, at Legacy 420, enjoy a pop freezy. Lab tested products, make them the GOAT. Legacy 420 out on your road. Legacy 420 in Tyendinaga Mohawk territory. Indigenous organic cannabis at its finest.
What do you find at paceradio.net? People advocating cannabis education.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Are you a cannabis content creator? Are you looking for a place to have your content seen? If you answer yes to both questions, then you need to check out cbgtv.com. CBGTV, broadcasting to a worldwide audience. Find us at cbgtv.com.
We are people advocating cannabis education here at paceradio.net.